Hello everybody and welcome to Anteli Block of the Month, month number 6. This month we are going to be working on these blocks right here that kind of look like they're curved piecing, but there is no curved piecing. So this will be another fun learning month for all of us. And we also will only be using 2 fabrics, fabric F2 and fabric F3. So grab those 2 fabrics and let's get started with the cutting. So from fabric F2, we are going to start by cutting 3 3 5/8 strips. Now you will notice that in the pattern, it has a little A beside the number of strips, and that's because we're going to save some of this leftover for a future block. So once we have all of our piecing done with this fabric, we will have some leftover of this particular strip, and we are going to save that for block number, month 8, step number 9. So I will label my fabric once I'm done for exactly which block we're going to use it on. So there's 3 3 5/8 strips. Put them up there. Now from fabric F2, we want to cut 3 2 1/2 inch strips. And there's also a little note along here that we are going to also need our leftover 2 1/2 inch strip from month number 3. So you're going to want to grab that strip as well as using 3 2 1/2 inch strips from the fabric. So we're going to label those, put them off to the side. And the last cutting we need to do this one is 8 2-inch strips. So that is what we will do next, and that is all the cutting for fabric F2. There's 3. Pull that over just a little bit more. And last 2, that gives me 8 2-inch strips. There we go. 8 2-inch strips. And now this one can go away, and we will bring up fabric F3. Now just before we start cutting up fabric F3, don't forget to grab that leftover 2 1/2 inch strip from month number 3. Now we'll throw it all in a pile, and we are ready to cut our F3. So we're going to start by cutting some 1 2 3/4 inch strip, 2 3/4 inches, and we just need 1 of those. And then we are going to cut 4 2 1/2 inch strips. And get something out from underneath there. There we go. Okay, that's all the main cutting done. We are ready to get piecing. So let's just get these fabrics out of the way and we'll get started. Now our first cut is going to be the F2 2 1/2 inch strips. And when we cut them, we want to leave them together, folded in half. We're not going to open the strip up all the way and cut singles, because we need to keep them in pairs, much like we did one other month in. And we're going to cut 36 2 1/2 by 2 inch pieces. So that's 36 pairs. So that's going to get rid of that selvage. And I'm going to go ahead and cut. So this, it's 2 1/2 by 2. Sorry, 2 1/2 by 2, and we want to keep them paired up, just like that. And we're going to cut 36 of these paired up. Okay, so continue with that cutting, keeping them paired until you have 36 of them. Okay, now we are going to take all of these pairs. I've got 36 of them here, and I want to keep them in pairs. And sometimes that's a little difficult when you're working with a batik, because they're the same both sides. If you have the V-block ruler, you are going to take every one of these guys right here, and line the V-block ruler up so that you are on the dark line right here on the edge of your fabric, and across here you're at the 1 1/2 finished unit. So you would line that up and go ahead and cut. And then you can pile those up together like that, and you will go ahead and cut all 36 of these pairs like so. And again, because we're working with a batik, I want to keep them separated this way because I can turn these around and they look exactly the same. So you want to make sure that you kind of keep them separated like that, so we will end up with lefties and righties. So each of these pairs gives me a left, 2 lefts, and 2 rights, like this. So out of each pair, I'm getting these 4 pieces. So make sure that you keep them together, like so. Now, if you do not have the V-block ruler, here's what you will do. Is you can make a template, use out of template plastic or freezer paper. I'm just using a little piece of stabilizer, and I've cut it to the 2 by 2 1/2, so 2 1/2 by 2. And if you take your ruler, let's just see if I can find a little bit of smaller ruler here, make it a little easier. So you take your ruler, line it up, and at the 3/8 mark, let's just zoom in on that. So at the 3/8 mark on my ruler, which is the little tick just to the right of the 1/2, you can go ahead and put a little tick right there. And then you can flip it around or just move it down here on the bottom corner. I'm going to line it up with just a little tick right there, again on the 3/8 from the edge. And then if I just go ahead and cut that, I can use that as a template. So I'll just go ahead and cut that. And you can see that my little template is the same size as the piece that I cut. So now you can go ahead and lay your little template down on all of those pieces. Make sure you line up this edge of your little template. Put your ruler there, lining up on the edge, and you can go ahead and cut. And there we go. So go ahead and get all of those cut up, and you will end up with 72 of these. So now we're going to grab our 2 1/2 F3 strips, and you should have 4 of them. And we are going to leave these also paired up so that they're folded in half. Don't cut them single. And we are going to cut these into 3 3/4 inch rectangles. So line that up on the 3 3/4. So 2 1/2 by 3 3/4. And we need a total of 12 of these. Save your leftovers. That strip needs a little bit of a press, I think. So here we go. I have my 12 pairs, and there's some more strips left over, so we're not done with that yet. Just grab that and put it back into your pile. And now we are going to subcut these, and we also want to subcut these in pairs. And we're doing something apparently a little bit different even for the V-block ruler. Okay, so what you're going to do if you have the V-block ruler is you're going to line the V-block ruler up on the 1 1/2 finished on the bottom. So line that up on the 1 1/2 finished, but instead of lining it up on this dark line like we usually do, you are going to line it up on the 6-inch line right here. Let me just zoom in a smidge for that, see if it shows better. There we go. So I'm lining it up down here on the 1 1/2 inch mark right here, and I'm lining it up here on the 6-inch line right there, and then I'm going to cut. And that will give you 2 pieces Again, we're going to have lefties and righties. Oops. We'll have lefties and righties, but that will give you the two pieces. Let's zoom out again. So you're going to continue and you're going to cut 12 of your pairs. So you're going to end up with 24 of, these are sticky little Dickenses, 24 of these, and 24 of these. Again, it's really difficult to tell with the batik which is the right and the wrong side. So this is the right side I'm looking at, and you'll end up with 24 of these and 24 of these. And these we're going to call A's, and these we're going to call B's. So go ahead and get that cutting done. Now, if you do not have the V-block trimmer, take your regular ruler, and you're going to line it up on the top, just like that, 1 1/4 inch, and make a little tick. And then take it across the bottom to the 1 1/4 and make a little tick there. So I'm 1 1/4 on the bottom, 1 1/4 here on the top, and then I'm just going to put my ruler in between those two, and I want to make sure, let's zoom in, that I'm right at the top of my pencil mark right there, and I'm right at the top of my pencil mark down here. I don't want to be down at the bottom of my pencil mark. I want to be at the top of my pencil mark, and go ahead and cut. And that will give me the same pieces without using the V-block ruler if you don't have one. So continue that until you have, again, 24 pieces of left and 24 right, and then we move on to the next cut. Okay, for our next cut, you're going to take the 2 1/2 inch strip that we have left, and we are going to cut little triangles. So if you are using your V-block ruler, let me zoom in. You're going to line up on the 1 1/2 inch line, right down here at the bottom. And for my first cut, I want to place the ruler so that I'm lined up on the 1 1/2 down here, and this diagonal line right here is on the fabric. I don't want it to be off the fabric because then I can't use that piece. But if I line the ruler up here so that I'm just on the fabric with this line down here, and I'm here, then I can go ahead and cut. Now this piece here, I want to flip it so that I can cut the rest of my triangle. All right, so originally I had it this way, okay? Now I want to flip it this way, and now I can line the ruler up, so now I'm lined up on the 1 1/2 right here, and I'm lined up on the diagonal right there, and I can go ahead and cut, like so. Now for the rest of this strip, what I will do now is flip my strip. I'm going to cut my triangle, flip my strip, cut my triangle. Just like this. And I am going to continue to do that until I have 48 of these. So carry on cutting. Now if you don't have the V-block ruler, this is how you'll cut the triangles using your regular ruler. If you do not have the V-block ruler, you can again make yourself a little template, whether it's out of template plastic or freezer paper. I'm going to use a little piece of the white fabric, the F2, just so you can see what I'm doing here. It shows up a little better than the paper. You want to cut a 2 1/2 by 2 1/2 inch square. So again, if you're using paper, you'll just use that 2 1/2 inch, and then you take that, fold it in half, give it a little bit of a crease there, line your ruler up. So this is the folded edge right here. This is the open edge. line up so that the tip of your ruler is right there at the tippy tip and right down here at the tip. Go ahead and cut that, and this piece that is folded will become your template, and that is what you will need. See, it's the same size there as the V block one, and that is what then you will use to cut your triangles. Line that up on your fabric, cut, cut, and then you will flip this, cut, 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 like so. So we're just going to line that up there. I'm going to go ahead and line my ruler up on my little piece of template. I'm going to flip this around, line my ruler up again on my little piece of template, and cut. I just want to make sure I'm not cutting my template so that it gets a little bit smaller every single time I make a cut. There we go. And then what I can do is just flip my template upside down, line it up on the edges, like so, and cut. Take those off of there, flip my little template around, and cut. And I will keep doing that until I have the correct number of pieces, which is 48. There we are. So continue that until you have 48 of the little triangles. All right, let's take a little bit of a break from the cutting and we'll do a little bit of sewing. So you're going to grab the triangles that we just cut and you want to bring in one of S1 and one of S2, and we're going to sew these units. So what you want to do first of all is sew this unit together right here, and when you push this over, the top tip should be lining up with the tip of your triangle, and the bottom tip here of this fabric should be lining up with the base of your triangle. Now it is very, very easy to get these confused and put them on the wrong way, like this. That is not the look we're going for. We want to turn these into basically a square when we're finished. So you'll sew all of these, 48 of these, this way. Then you're going to head to the ironing board. You're going to press, and then we'll put the other side on. So let's head over to the ironing board, or nope, sorry. Let's head over to the sewing machine, 1/4 inch seam allowance, grab all of these and the left side, so S1. So off to the sewing machine. So when you get that first little piece sewn on, right, I lined up my top edge here, I lined up that bottom edge right there. Once I sew it on with my 1/4 inch seam allowance and I flip it open, I've kind of got some sticky outy down here. Don't worry about that, that's how it is supposed to look. And we've got that little point sticking up here that is also perfect. Don't worry, that's how it's supposed to look. And when you go to the ironing board, we're going to press all of them towards this unit right here. So carry on and do all 48 of these with the left hand side put on. All right, here I am back from the sewing machine, and I'm now going to take all of these little bits of happiness over to the ironing board, and we're going to press them all towards the outer piece, so towards F2. So that's our next job, off to the ironing board. And here we are back from the ironing board. Now these are my leftover S1s that we're going to be using later. So we'll keep those together. Now out of all 47 of those, I put one, or 48 of those, I put one on the wrong side. That doesn't matter because now we're just going to fill in the other side. So you're going to take all your blocks and you are now going to put this one on the right hand side. Now where we piece this and you have that little bit of sticky outy bit right there, you line that corner right here up with the sticky outy bit so that they're lined up perfectly on top of one another, and that will also line up the bottom edge of your block right there, and you're going to sew that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that's the next step. Grab all 48 of your pieces and just put the opposite side on. Again, be really careful you don't sew it on this way. That is not the look we're going for. We want something that's going to look like this. So back to the sewing machine. And And here we go, back from the sewing machine again. Now I have both pieces on. I'm going to go back to the ironing board and I want to press this again towards the outer piece. So press it towards fabric number F2. So off to the ironing board. So here we are back from the ironing board, and now we need to trim all these down. And they actually come out quite oversized because we're going to end up trimming them to 2 inches square. So if you have the V-block ruler, you're going to start by putting the V this way, and you want to line up the 1.5 inches that's on the ruler, this 1.5 inches diagonal right here. You want to line that up so that your V is right inside that 1.5 inches. So the 1.5 inches is right here at the very, very tip, and the diagonal line is lined up with the rest of the V in my block. And then you can go ahead and cut. And then we want to flip it around. And now I'm going to line it up so that the second X, so this X right here, is lined up right at the tip of my V. I'm lined up here on the 2 inch. I'm lined up here on the 2 inch. My little X up there is lined up. And then I can cut the rest off. And that gives me a perfect 2 inch square V block. So let's do that one more time with the V block ruler. Start with the V upside down like that. Line it up so that the 1.5 is right here at your very tip, and the diagonal lines on the ruler are lined up with your V. And cut and cut. Flip your block around, bring the ruler back in, line that V up with the second X. So I'm lined up on that X right at the tip of my V, and I'm lined up by the 2 and the 2. A little bit of pressure on the ruler, cut and cut. And there's my 2 inch V block. Now, if you don't have the V block ruler, you can get the same idea with your regular ruler. Just line this up, and to aid in keeping it straight so I don't get like a wonky block, I'm going to line it up using my mat as a guide. So I'm lining up on one of the lines of my mat, and I'm making sure that the line here is going through the tip of my V, like so. Then I'm going to put the ruler down on top. I want 1/4 inch from the tip. So I'm going to measure from here, and I'm using the dots on my ruler. So I'm using these little dots on my ruler, lining that up. And if I line it up, so the dot right where my 1 is lined up right on the edge here, I can go ahead and cut both sides like so. Flip it around. Now I want to line up. So I'm at the 1 inch, right? I've got 1/4 inch from here to here, and I'm using the dots on my ruler to show me that. I'm lined up 2 inches, 2 inches, and I cut. And there I have a perfect V block. So let's do that again. I'm going to take my piece of my V, line it up like this. I have this line on my mat going right down through the center just to keep myself straight. I put my ruler in, I line up the 1/4 inch dot at the 1 inch mark on my ruler, right there. And then I cut and I cut. Then I flip it around. I again line up the 1 inch dot, the 1 inch center of my ruler. I'm 1/4 inch away from the edge of the ruler to my point. I line it up on 2 inches and 2 inches, cut and cut. We'll do that again. Line up. Make sure this is going through the center of my block. And that just keeps me straight. It stops me from kind of having a little bit of a wonky block. I line my ruler up. The 1 inch dot on my ruler, that's 1/4 inch away from the edge. So right here, I line that up with the very tippy dot of my of my block. I make sure that I'm lining up straight, and I know I'm lining up straight because I have that line on the mat going through the center of my block. I cut like so, get rid of those points, turn it around. Now I line it up on the 2-inch. I line it up on the 2-inch, and just as a double check, the 1-inch should be going through the center of my block, and I should be 1/4 of an inch away from here to the tip of my V. Oop. And cut and cut. And there we go. So continue cutting and trimming down all of these blocks. Doesn't matter which method you use, which whenever makes you the happiest. And then we will move on to the next step. So get all of these blocks done, and then we'll move on. Well, there we go. That was fun. I absolutely do enjoy the accuracy that squaring up gives me. So now take all these, put them off to the side, and we're going to build another block. I just want to get all this scrap off my table. There we go. Okay, so you're going to grab your 1s and 2s back, and what we're going to do is we are going to take these blocks and turn them into, oh, the sticky little devil. Put a little bit of DNA on that. There we go. Okay, so you are going to take all of these, and we're going to sew that on there. Same principle as when we were sewing the others. Line it up nice here, and this point of the piece line up. And you're going to sew that on with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. There, and you're going to take the other half of those and sew that side on. So what you're basically doing is turning these back into squares. So sew this one to here and that one to there. And again, it's kind of easy to get them mixed up. We don't want to do that. That's not the look we're going for. We are going for this look right here. So grab all of those back to the sewing machine and sew all of these and these together. And of course, you will end up with 24 of each. So back to the sewing machine. Okay, so here I am back from the sewing machine, and I just wanted to point something out. Because this is a batik, it is really, really easy to get these mixed up. So what we want to end up with is some going this way and some going this way. Right? Before don't sweat too much about points meeting. We're going to square these things down to like 2 inches square, so we've got lots and lots of room to square them down. So don't stress too much about your points at right here, but it is really important that you have 24 this way and 24 this way. So when I had them at my sewing machine, I laid them down how I wanted them to look. So I had these two piled together and these two piled together. Again, because these are batiks and there's no really discernible right or wrong side, it is very easy to just do like a whole bunch of the same thing. And we don't. We want some lefts and some rights. So after you get all those done, off to the ironing board. And we are going to press all of these towards fabric F2. Okay, now we are back from the ironing board yet again, and we're ready to start trimming these up. Now we're going to trim these up to 2 inches square. So if you have the V-block trimmer, what you're going to do is, first of all, if it's this block here where the angle is going this way, you're going to flip it over. So we're going to be working on it from the back side because we want to see that seam, the stitching. You're going to take the diagonal line on the V-block ruler, line it up with that stitching, and just make sure that 2 inches, which is here and here, is inside the block. So your 2 inches inside, your 2 inches inside. All we're really concerned about is lining up on here and then making sure that we're bigger than 2 inches all the way around. And then you go ahead and you make your first 2 cuts, there and there. Then you flip this around like this, And we're going to line it up on the 2-inch and the 2-inch. And just as a little test, that second X line right there should also be lining up right on your diagonal seam, the one that you had stitched out. And you'll open your rotary cutter first, and then cut and cut. So you end up with a 2-inch square block that looks like this. Now that's if you're doing this one, right? Flip it over, work from the back side. If you are doing the opposite side, what you want to do is work from the front side. So this angle, work from the back. This angle, work from the front. And when you're doing this one, you are lining that line on the ruler right there up with the, again, sew and line. So line it up on your seam. Make sure your 2 inches is inside all the way around. And you can go ahead and cut and cut. Get rid of that. Flip it around. Now you're lining it up on the 2-inch and the 2-inch. And as an added little check to bonus, that little diagonal right there should be lined up directly on your line. So what I'm looking at is this diagonal part of the X lining up directly on my seam. Like that. Cut, cut. Okay, there we go. Put it in the correct pile. So let's do that one more time. From this pile, we work from the front. Let's get rid of some of that stuff out of the way. So this pile, we work from the front. I line it up on the diagonal. Make sure I'm bigger than 2 inches all the way around. Cut, cut. Flip it around. Line up exactly on the 2-inch and the 2-inch. And take a look to make sure that your diagonal is lined up right here on your seam. Cut, cut. Put it in the pile. Now this other pile, these ones right here, we're working from the back. So you flip it over to the back side. Line that diagonal up on your stitching line. Making sure the 2 inches is in all the way around. So I'm lining on my stitching line. I have 2 inches bigger all the way around. Cut, cut. Turn that around like so. Make sure you're lined up on 2 inches, 2 inches. Get that diagonal lined up on your stitch line. Let's do that one more time because I almost messed it up. So we're grabbing one out of this pile where we're working from the back. Lay it down. Line up your diagonal. Make sure you're bigger than 2 inches. Cut, cut. Flip it around. Line up exactly on the 2 inches. So line up here, line up here. That little X is on my seam. And cut. So there we go. That is how you're going to cut them up if you have the V-block ruler. Now if you don't have the V-block ruler and you're using a regular ruler, this is how you're going to trim them. So we're going to do this one from the front because the same thing applies. We're going to be doing some from the back and some from the front. So what you want to do is line your ruler up so that the 1/8 mark on your ruler right there is on the diagonal. And so the 1/8 mark on your ruler is on the diagonal, and the 1 1/8 mark is on the diagonal, and you're bigger than 2 inches. So you can move that ruler around until you have an 1/8 up here and a 1 1/8 down there where it crosses over. Go ahead and cut. Flip that around. Line it up on the 2 inches exactly. So I'm 2 inches here, I'm 2 inches here, and I'm going to cut. And there we go. So let's do that again. This is for the one where we're doing right side up. Line that ruler up so it's on the 1/8, and the 1 1/8 is crossing my diagonal down here, so I'm 1/8, 1 1/8. I'm well within the 2 inches. Go ahead, cut, cut, flip it around, line up exactly on the 2 inches. So I'm 2 inches here, 2 inches here. And just as a little reference, if you wanted to check where you're crossing the diagonal, right here is at 1 1/8 still. So cut and cut. And there you go. One more time on this part. Line it up so I am 1/8, 1 1/8 on my diagonal down there. Like so. And sometimes they're going to look a little weird like this one. Flip it around, line it up exactly on the 2 inch, and you will see that even though the front was a little weird, I'm still crossing my 1 1/8 right here, and I'm lined up on my 2 inches and my 2 inches. So cut and cut. And there we go. So for the block going in the other direction, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to do it from the back side. So you're going to flip it over to the wrong side. You are going to line the 1/8 up on your stitching line and the 1 1/4 down here on your stitching line. Make sure those are both there. Cut, cut, flip it around, line up exactly on the 2 inch. So I'm now on my 2 inches and my 2 inches. Just as another little check, my stitching line is still going through that 1 1/4. Cut and cut. There we go. Another time, take this one, line it up, 1/8 on my stitching line, 1 1/8 on my stitching line, so 1/8, 1 1/8, bigger than 2 inches all the way around, cut, cut, flip it around, line it up on the 2 inch mark. So I'm 2 inches and 2 inches, cut, cut. And there we go. So continue doing that and have all of those blocks squared up to 2 inches, and then we will move on to the next piecing. All right, now we're going to grab our 3 5/8 inch strips of F2. And we are going to cut that into squares. And we want 24 3 5/8 inch squares. Let's just get rid of that bit of salvage there. Okay, 3 5/8 inch. So of course 5/8 is the little slash past the 3 1/2. And we want 24 of these. So cut that all up. 3 5/8. And you'll have 24. Now once you have your 24 3 5/8 inch squares, take the rest of the strip and put it into the bag, and we're going to be using that on month 8, step number 9. So label that month 8, step number 9, and pop that back into your bag. Now we are going to do a little bit of weird subcutting on this block. We want to cut off one of the corners, the lower left-hand corner. Now if you have your corner pop ruler, you're going to line that up. So this diagonal is on here, and this diagonal is the 1 1/2, and then you're going to scooch the ruler in about 1/16 of an inch. Now these are going to be squared up, so that little 1/16 is kind of arbitrary, but it will give us the room to go ahead and square up this block once we get done. So let's do that one more time with the corner pop ruler. Line up on the line here, the diagonal here, the 1 1/2 here, scooch in about 1/16 of an inch. So now I'm about 1/16 of an inch here and here. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Now, if you don't have the corner pop ruler, again, because this is pretty arbitrary and it's going to be squared up, this is going to finish up quite a bit oversized, grab your regular ruler and look for where your diagonal line is. I'll move that in so you can see it a little better. Okay, so I'm going to line up my diagonal line on this edge of my block, and I'm going to scooch it down until I am just about 1 1/4 inches in. So on the ruler, there's a little dot right there at the 1 1/4. I'm going to line it up so that I'm on that 1 1/4, and then I'm going to scooch it out just a smidge, about a 1/16 of an inch. So I'm still lining up perfectly here, and I'm just a hair shy of 1 1/4 down at the bottom. And I'm going to cut. So go ahead and finish cutting all of the corners off of those. And as long as they're lined up on top of one another, you can do a couple at a time. And like I say, we will be squaring these up once we finish the block. So close counts on this one. It's not often you can say in quilting that close counts. Usually you want it to be a little more precise, but because we are squaring up, we have some wiggle room. So carry on and get all of those cut. And then we will move on to the next step. All right, now that you have all those done, let's put them into a little pile. And now we're going to take our 2 3/4 inch strip of fabric F3, and we're going to cut it into 2 3/4 inch squares. And we want 12 of those. So go ahead, cut this into 2 3/4 inch squares. And then we are going to subcut all of those squares on one diagonal. And I bet you can guess where they're going. Okay, so keep going. There's 6. 8. 10 and 12. Okay, now take all of those. This can go back into the pile. We're not using that one anymore. Now let's take all of these and cut them on one diagonal. So just line your ruler up from diagonal to diagonal and cut all of these on one. And I don't know if I mentioned, but hallelujah, we're on page number 2 of this block. There's a lot of components to this block, and we're doing a lot of kind of different stuff that is not even normal for the rulers that we're using. So kind of fun. It's always fun doing new stuff. All right, once you have all of those cut on one diagonal, now, there we go, there's all mine cut on one diagonal. Now we are going to take them and we are going to sew them onto this block right here. And they are pretty oversized, so don't let that freak you out too much. Right here. Line that up so that you have about equal sticky outie. So I've got equal pieces sticking out at each side, but we're going to square them up. So close is going to count on this one as well. And go ahead and put all of those onto all of these. So back to the sewing machine. All right, so here we are back from the ironing board. Oh, that one could use another press. I'm going to leave that one beside. Let's do this one. That's better. That one's pressed better. So now we need to trim this down, and we're going to trim it to 3.5 inches. So if you have your corner pop ruler, you're going to take the corner pop ruler and line the diagonal here up on the 1 1/2 inch mark. And you need to make sure you're bigger than 3.5 all the way around. So line that up on the 1 1/2 this way. And trim. Flip it around. And now you want to line it up so that you have the 4 1/2 diagonal right there, lined up on your diagonal. And you're at 3.5. And trim. Just like that. Let's try that one more time. Line up on the 1.5 inch, making sure, I know sometimes it's a little wonky, but this dotted line right here and down here, I want to make sure I have fabric outside of those lines. So line it up on the 1.5 and move the ruler around just so that it's bigger here and here. And you're going to cut there and there. Flip it around. Line this up on the 4.5, and that will give you your 3.5 on that dotted line. And then you'll cut and cut. There we go. One more time, because this one is really, really wonky. Let's see if we can make this one work. Line it up on the 1.5. Okay, making sure that I'm bigger all the way around. I'm lined up on my 1.5. So even this really super wonky one is going to be okay when I'm finished. Flip it around. Line that up on the 4.5. And finish the cutting. Okay, so that's if you have the corner pop ruler. That's how you're going to cut them. If you don't have the corner pop ruler, you're just going to use your regular ruler. Let's get this one out of the way. And grab your regular ruler. And you're going to put it in so that the diagonal here, I'm coming right to the corner of the 2 and right down here. Lined up right on the 2 inch. I'm bigger than 3.5 all the way around. And cut. Flip it, line it up on exactly on the 3.5. Like that. And cut. So that gives you a square exactly the same size. So let's try that again. Grab another one. Okay, I'm going to line this up so that I'm touching right here at the 2.5, or sorry, at the 2, and I'm touching right here at 2 inches. Maybe make it easier if I actually do it this way. So it's 2 and 2. So I've got 2 right there, and I have 2 right here, and this is the diagonal is traveling directly between the 2 of those. I'm peeking to make sure I'm bigger than 3.5 all the way around, and cut. Flip. Line it up exactly on the 3.5, like so, and cut. Okay, so continue doing that with all of these. Get them all trimmed up. And then, by golly, I think we're ready to start actually assembling this block and getting it together. A lot of very special units involved in this block. There. Okay, so carry on. So once those are all trimmed up, take them off to the sides, and we want to grab our triangles that we had made, these ones right here. We want to grab these, and we want these, which are technically unit C's. We want to grab them, and we are going to sew these together like this. So you're going to lay those on top of one another, and we're going to sew those together so that we get 24 units that look like this. So we're going to do 24 of these, and then of course we're going to do 24 with this one. So we'll end up with 24 going this way and 24 going this way. Now I'm going to do them one at a time. I'm going to do this set first because, again, it's still pretty easy to get these messed up. And when you're putting them together, we don't have opposing seams, and we know how much I like opposing seams. So if you manually want to flip that one over or go back and repress these ones towards the dark, that would work, and then you would have opposing seams. And I don't know at this point if that's going to cause us issues later on in the quilt, but I don't think that it will. She's talking about pressing the seams open. So what she's talking about is once we get that seam done, we're going to press that seam open as opposed to pushing it to one side. So let's see what happens. But go ahead and sew all of these ones together. We'll leave those ones for now. These ones together like so. So you've got one triangle and one of those units. Put them together and you're going to end up with a block that looks like this. In fact, you'll end up with 24 of those. So back to the sewing machine. Back from the sewing machine, I'm now going to go to the ironing board and press these, and we're going to try to press that seam open. I'm not really in love with pressing seams open when I'm quilting, but in this case we might have to, just to ease the seam bulk. So we're going to try to press these seams open right there, and that will give us 24 in this direction. And then we're going to go back and we're going to sew 24 in the other direction so that we have some lefties and some righties. So off to the ironing board for these ones, off to the sewing machine with these ones. Okay, the verdict is in. I tried it both ways. It is quite a seamy little block with a lot of bulk right here if you don't press that seam open. So try to press this seam open on the back there on this block, and I am going to go and sew the other ones. All right, now we've got these ones done, so they're the mirror image to the one we just finished. You're going to do exactly the same thing. Go and press them open. So give them an open press, and then we will move on to the next block. Okay, back from the ironing board. I'm going to put these off to the side for a second, and we are going to take a wee break from piecing because we're going to do a little bit more cutting. We have our 2-inch strips of fabric fabric F2, and we need to cut these into 24 2 by 6.5, 24 2 by 5, and 24 2 by 2 inch squares. So that is what we are going to do next, and just take a quick little break from the piecing. I'll just cut those selvages off. Now, because we are going to do 6.5-inch pieces, I'm going to grab my 6.5-inch ruler. And we want to do 24 of these. Ooh, am I going to have enough left over there to get 2-inch squares? And no. Okay. Let's just lay down a couple more. Now, if you're going to cut double layers like I'm doing here, just make sure that they're perfectly lined up on top of one another. And I'm going to nip off that selvage. And we need to cut. There's 4, 8, and 12. Throw those off to the side. That is all of our 6.5s. And now we want to cut some 5s. And we need 24 of them. Again, let's just cut off that selvage. And this time we want 5-inch strips. 16. And there is 24. And now we want to do 24 2-inch squares. So 4, 12, 20, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So I have those all cut. I have my 6.5s, I have my 5s, and my 2s. And now we need to lay these blocks out. And we're going to sew them together as units. So the block is going to go together like this. This in the center, like that. And then a 5 and a 6.5. So we're going to sew these together this way. You're going to sew these two pieces together, these two pieces together, sew that together, and then sew this and this. So let's break this down. You're going to take all of these, which is 24 of these, and we're going to sew them to the 2-inch squares. So grab all of these units and your 2-inch squares, go to the sewing machine, and we are going to sew them all this way, like this. All right, so here I am back from the ironing board, or back from the sewing machine, and we're going to take these and press all these seams towards the smaller square. So that's our next job, off to the ironing board. There we go, back from the ironing board. Our next set of blocks we're going to make is we're going to piece these two pieces together. So you are going to seam these two, like so. So back to the sewing machine. We're getting less loose pieces though, so it's a good thing. All right, now take this unit to the ironing board and we're going to press towards the bigger square. So you're going to press this way. So off to the ironing board. There we are. Now we are going to sew these two units together. So we'll end up with a block that's going to look like that. So back to the sewing machine and back from the sewing machine. Now this seam we are going to press again towards the inner block. So press it towards this block right here. So cute. Back to the sewing ironing board and back from the ironing board. Now we're going to sew the 5-inch strips onto the top of all of the blocks. Make sure you get the orientation right, because this will fit anywhere around the block now. So we want to put that on the top. Now I love how this block gives the illusion of a curve without there actually being any curve piecing there. Although the neighbor children think I'm making a bat quilt, because this looks like the Batman symbol apparently. But no, I am not. So go ahead, sew all of those onto the top of the block, and we are going to press those again in towards the main block, and then we just put this one on the edge and we are done. So back to the sewing machine. All right, back from the sewing machine. Now take these and press them in towards the center block. And then we just have one more seam to do. So off to this ironing board. And we're back. And now we are down to the very last seam. So you're going to take the 6.5-inch piece, 6.5 by 2, and put it all on the right-hand side of all these units, so that you'll end up with 24 units that'll look just like that. So for the last time, back to the sewing machine. And for the last time, we are heading back over to the ironing board, and we are going to press towards the seam, the block we just put on. So we're going to press towards the 2-inch strip. So back to the ironing board, and we are done. That is another month finished. Now when we look at the diagram, this is where we are now with what we finished. We have all this done. We've now completed these blocks right in here. We have all of these blocks finished. So we are basically halfway through this quilt. Very exciting. Now this one has been a little bit of a marathon, but I certainly do like the way the oversized pieces and trimming them down has added to the accuracy of the block, because there's quite a lot of units in this block, but it came together really, really well. Not only that, but on the very last seam, I was playing bobbin roulette. And I only have this much thread left on my bobbin. So yay, it's a good evening. And speaking of that, yes, this has been a marathon, and it is past my Betty Bye time. So I am off to nighty nights, and I wish you all an absolutely wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Happy sewing!